Welcome to Guys That Listen. I'm Peter, and today we got special guest Brandon on the podcast. Woo.
What's going on?
Welcome, bro. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, my name is Brandon Miranda. I'm a Grammy-nominated producer and audio engineer, and newly married too, actually.
Damn, that is fresh and very unexpected, by the way. I was like, wow, I guess we haven't caught up in that long. Yeah. But, whoa, how'd that come about?
Well, I mean, it was quick for sure. We got engaged last November, but my wife and I both knew as soon as we got engaged, we're like, let's do this and let's do this quickly, you know, because we're both very, very spiritual people, right? And so we look at marriage through a spiritual lens, and we understand that when two people come together, because you become more of a whole, it being as like one being, there's a lot more doors that open up through that vision, through that threshold of marriage. So we both kind of knew in our hearts, like, let's take this thing across the finish line as fast as we can. Wow. And even going against our own better judgment and against some friends and family who are saying, guys, you're going too fast. The crazy thing is, as soon as we got married, neither of us really, okay, let me go backtrack. Before we got married, neither of us really had jobs going on. We really didn't have much going on for ourselves. Yeah. She was living with her pops. I was living in Calabasas and just kind of barely making it and everything. And then as soon as we got married, everything completely turned around. I got a brand new job. I'm working as an in-house producer and audio engineer over at Ethica. We got relocated down here to Irvine. She got a crazy new job. We had people give to us some money that completely changed our lives, and everything, like literally the day after, everything got turned around.
That's insane. That's wow. What way you catch me up on that, dude? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I know you guys said that, or you said that you guys are spiritual.
Yeah.
How did you come to that? Okay, so at that point, you guys got engaged. You guys were not working.
Yeah.
How do you get to that point? I mean, you guys been together for how long now?
About 3 years now. Yeah.
Then as soon as the engagement happened, like run to the finish line.
Yeah, exactly.
How did it accelerate so much?
How, in terms of like us wanting to get married and then...
Yeah, because, you know, I've heard of people getting married after like 2 months. They've been together 2 months to get married.
Yeah.
That whole process is super fast, right? From the point where they started dating to getting married. That's crazy.
Right.
Looks like you guys were steady for a while, and then you decided to get married out of nowhere, and then you got married right away after that.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So I kind of knew, I knew this person was the one because of three factors. One, we align with our morals and our passion, especially our passion for God. Two, she was not, this is a crazy thing, she was not what I expected, nor necessarily like envisioned when I was like, this is the person I want to marry, right? And I think you can relate to this. Like the way I grew up, to me, what was portrayed was that marriage is kind of like a business venture where it's like both people are just building this whole thing together. And that's what like purpose in my mind was like framed, right? And this person was actually wired in the opposite of that. And so for her values are really framed through love and family and enjoyment of life. And to me, that was just like, wait, what? Like, you want to sleep in? You don't want to do this? Wait, we're showing up late to these spots? What? But then I realized, like, yo, there's actually, because I've spent so much of my life working and in the studio and grind and in that grind culture and that grind mentality, she opened this whole part of my life that I realized, like, I never gave myself permission to have. I never gave myself permission to just enjoy comfort and enjoy good life and enjoy family. And I started to realize how she was causing my heart to open up more. And that's when I was like, all right, perfect. That's another one that I'm realizing this is another person who helps me to become more of a whole person. Right? So those were the two biggest components. And then the third one was that our families got along very, very well. And I saw that, okay, if we can have a constructive family and merge these families and also have our families not just respect, like that Sydney and I will be our own individual family, but actually like support us. I was like, boom, 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 boom. Okay, I'm ready to do this thing.
Was it a decision that was, because you proposed, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I proposed, yeah. The whole thing.
Was that an idea that you guys had already spoken about prior, or
Oh, I caught her with the surprise.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, I caught her with the surprise.
How'd you do it?
So I had I'm pretty traditional. So I made sure to get like permission from both her parents prior. I started this whole plan like 3 to 4 months in advance, and I timed it with her birthday. You know, like they say, like you're at advantage when you keep, you know, dangerous things closest to you, right? And so I was like, hey, if I stage a whole event all around her birthday, there's no way she's gonna expect
Oh, yeah,
a proposal,
true,
right?
true.
So she's like, babe, like I want to do this on my birthday. I'm like, cool, we'll go here, but I also want to take you on a nice little like gondola ride type thing, right? Because we haven't done that before. I know you're passionate about Europe, and this would be kind of cool, like little way to experience Italy while we're in California. And so we do the whole little gondola ride. She thinks we're gonna just have dinner at this like boat club in Newport in the harbor and everything. And then I had to arrange her whole family to show up and surprise her. And even then, she didn't understand yet until I got down on the knee and showed her the ring and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Smart, dude.
Thank you.
Smart.
Yeah.
I've always been curious how people plan those things. You know, I had a friend who just got engaged this past week. And it was kind of funny because on his girlfriend's side, or his fiance now, all of her friends had gone on a girls' trip. So they had left. And they got mad because they're like, hey, don't propose to her until we come back because we want to be there for the proposal.
Right.
He's like, no, I'm going to do it now because she won't expect it because you guys are gone. I was like, that's kind of brilliant.
That's
you know
kind of
what I mean?
wise.
Yeah, that
like
makes sense. When you proposed, what was the idea as far as like the marriage goes? You guys did it so quickly. I'm assuming you guys didn't have a wedding?
No, we actually did. It was a pretty.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, there's
Shit.
and I just learned this following COVID. There's a whole new industry that revolves around what's called the micro weddings. Yeah. So a micro wedding is constituted based upon the amount of people. So between 20 to 50 people constitutes a micro wedding. Anything smaller than that is like an elopement, right? And so we started realizing, oh man, there's all these venues and all these properties and all these places that you can just rent it out or book it out and do a wedding like less than 20 people. So we knew like, hey, given, you know, where we were financially, given like our desire to do this so quickly and the whole invitation process, we're like, let's do a really small but beautiful intimate thing, and then we can do the bigger ceremony later. And you know, a lot of people encouraged us too when we went to friends and mentors about it. They're like, guys, that's an expense that most expense, it's like between $60,000 to $100,000 for a wedding these days, you know. And they're like, save that money so you can start a business, you can travel, you can go on your honeymoon. And we did that. So we saved the money. We had an awesome honeymoon. We've also been able to kind of like build our business too by saving extra cash and everything. And life this first year has been awesome. And one thing I learned too, actually two things I learned for anyone that wants to get married. As soon as you're done getting married, you know, after the kiss the bride moment, all you want to do is just go hang out with your wife.
Yeah.
You know, so like we were both like, dang, we're glad we didn't do the whole like wedding thing, because all we want to do once we're done, we're just like, we just want to chill.
Yeah.
You know, the second thing is saving all that money was dope. And why I loved it is when we got back from our honeymoon, I wanted to take like 2 more weeks off from work. So we had like a stay at home type honeymoon. And that was so nice.
Nice.
That was so nice. So that's what I'm saying. Save a little extra cash. When you come back from wherever it is you're traveling, if you go to like Fiji or whatever, take another week off so you can just ease back into real life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like just ripping the Band-Aid off so quickly, sometimes people are like, oh, damn, I'm back in reality now. Wish I took a little bit more time, you know?
I went back to, because I had like a side gig doing like audio at my church, and I went back for one day, and I was like, no.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, all right, cool. Like, this is cool. I'm going to take the next like week and a half off. I can't.
You know, now that you're back and you guys have been married for what now, a couple months?
Yeah, about 2.5 months, 3 months.
2.5 months, and your lives sounds like it's changed completely. How did you guys start processing all that? Because it seems like you guys weren't planning on any of it, right? These things just kind of came unexpectedly. I mean, but I'm sure you were working at things at the same time too. You weren't just like letting things fall into your lap, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, yes and no. Like, I think I have been doing little projects here and there in like the music licensing space, and so there's stuff building up, and I had some business with my now boss over at Ethica, but a lot of these things were really fast. I mean, like, we got married, and when we got back from our honeymoon, the lease ended, but I got the new job. So we literally, like a week after we got married, I had to box everything up and move to Irvine, right? So life is starting. We're starting to kind of catch our flow right now. We're starting to kind of catch our rhythm and our step. But one thing we've been learning is like patience, and someone brought back the remembrance of this phenomenon, or this like concept of Kaizen, right?
Yeah.
Of just focus on like 1% improvements, right? Because life is so shifting, chaotic, and you're bringing in now not just myself, but I also have to think about like my wife's thoughts and feelings and what she wants to do. And sometimes we might have a plan, but then our mood or our feelings towards that plan might shift in the moment. And so something I'm learning how to do right now is just focus on like, did I perform a little bit better? Did she perform a little better? Did I love her a little bit better? Did I show up to work a little bit better? And if we're improving and shifting and just kind of catching and establishing our flow, and everything is getting 1% better every single day, then we're on the right path, right? I think a lot of people get caught up in like, okay, I need the perfect system, and I need the perfect flow, and I need the perfect approach to this, all established right here and right now. And then everyone quits, or you end up doing some weird abridged version of that plan that you had. And the reason why isn't because of your willpower. It's just like, you don't understand that if you try to cause a dramatic shift in your life, it's very hard for your mind and your body to stick to that. So now I'm learning to really like encourage myself and be like, hey, this may not have been the best day between like me and work or with my wife and I, but did we get a little bit better? Okay, yeah, actually we did approach that, and I'll focus on celebrating that, and that kind of is what becomes my strength of like, okay, we're starting to catch our flow and build our rhythm. And look, we have our whole rest of our lives to solidify all that.
Yeah, and also I think when it comes to something like a partnership, you know, on days where maybe you don't have that 1%, the other person can make up for it. You know, 100%. I think that's what it is, because it is partnership. It's a thing between two people, right? So it's not like you do 1% and she does 1%. Sometimes she has to do 2. Sometimes you have to do 2. Sometimes she does everything, and sometimes like you'll double that. You know, and that's how it works, and that's okay. You know, I think just there's possibly some harm in feeling like that you always have to be 1% better, because we're humans. You know what I mean? We're not meant to operate at always improving everything that we do.
100%.
There's no way.
Yeah.
I kind of want to rewind it back a little bit. You've been with your wife now for over 2 years?
Yeah.
3 years now?
Yeah, going on 3.
Going on 3. You mentioned that she wasn't the person that you thought that you'd end up with.
Right.
So how did you meet her, and how did we get to this point, if that's the case?
Yeah, we met through music.
Oh.
Yeah, so she's a singer and a vocalist, and a mutual friend of ours, they introduced us. And it was funny because in the first session, it was definitely kind of a love at first sight type thing. Yeah. So I guess I was hitting on my client at the time. But
Oh, damn.
yeah.
So how does that work? Like, you guys are in the room, you guys are having a session. Are you just complimenting her music, her voice? Is that what you're doing? How do you slide that in? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I guess like I kind of teased her a bit. I was like, I'm gonna do some push-ups. Say, oh, okay, da da da, you know. And I think funny little icebreakers and stuff like that are important. Anyways, in the studio, icebreakers I'm learning are so important, because creating and making music is such an intimate kind of thing, you know. So in a way, I kind of did what I would normally do with anyone who steps into the office with me, but then there's a little extra text messaging following up the session and everything.
Gotcha.
So
did she know from the get?
We both kind of knew, but we both didn't know how to approach it in the beginning, for sure. You know, and it was a little like tiptoeing and stuff. And then finally there just came a moment when I knew I'd be like, all right, you know what? Let me be honest with you. I like you, you know, like I want to explore this and stuff. And she was totally down, completely open to it. So
when you mentioned that she wasn't the person that you initially had thought, because I'm sure you had an idea in your mind of who your perfect person was, or your person that you wanted to be with. Did you come to terms with that when you were dating her? Because obviously at this point you're like, oh, I really, really like this person, and it's different. So maybe I just didn't really understand what I wanted, or I didn't know this kind of person existed.
Good question. I think actually dating becomes a preview of what you will grow into when you become married, right? So I thought I was growing, and we did. We both realized that like a lot of us in certain ways are very similar yet very different at the same time, especially in the way we see things and see purpose and view that. And there's a mutual healing and growth for us. But we realized that after we got married, there's a huge acceleration in that, you know? I always say that she has really taught me how to love better. And after getting married, I really have a completely different mind in terms of what love means and the importance of it. And I think we can relate with this, right? Like, because your family's Vietnamese, my family is Mexican. We come from a very like work hard type culture.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with working hard. I think it's great. I think America was really built off like the hard work mentality of people who are coming from outside, you know? But sometimes there becomes a love component that gets lost from there.
Yeah.
And what's the point of hard work if you have no love in it, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've felt something very similar to what you were talking about prior to. You know, I had a ex who was very much like how your wife is.
Yeah.
You know, and all I cared about was, it wasn't like I was like, I cared about working hard. It was just, I had a lot of things I was very passionate about and that I wanted to get done. And she was the person that's like, hey, just chill. Like, sleep in a little bit. You know, like, go get a massage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Like, how am I going to get these things done if I'm chilling?
Right.
And I think allowing that to happen, it did change a part of me now where I am slower now than ever. I'm not in a bad way, but but like I'll take my time on things that don't need to be rushed.
Exactly.
You know, and even as far as to go into something like meditating, right? That's not due to her, but I think that's due to the influences of her, because from slowing down, I've finally come to almost like a halt, right? With something like meditating. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, like I'm not doing anything that is productive towards my passions directly. You know, I do feel like it does help, because I think it helps clear my mind. Yeah. And being more focused and have more clarity is like really important in my everyday life. So indirectly it helps everything. Yeah. You know? And I think that's because it started with her. I've allowed that to happen. And, you know, before I was just like, no, just go. Like, I would just constantly fill my day up all the time, whether it was work, whether it's friends, family. Like, I was the guy who basically always had something to do. Yeah. All the time.
I was 100% like that too. Yeah. And I'm learning now, like, not every day do you need to fill the cup to the complete top.
I don't think I don't think people should in general, you know, and maybe this is a unpopular opinion, but the people who do that, where they fill their cup to the brim, let's talk about like the people who are known to be workaholics, like someone like Elon Musk, for example. You hear him talk. He's not a happy guy. You know what I mean? Like, he is very smart. He's doing a lot of things for like people, but at the same time, it sounds like he has to sacrifice himself for what he's doing. You know, and his mind is like chaotic. And personally, for me, going back to what you're saying, what's life without love, and what's life without happiness? You know, and I'm glad that there are people willing to sacrifice and do things like that. That just can't be me personally.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is too, is like, I believe that life is measured, success in my heart now is really measured by your ability to love, and the legacy of love that you leave. Because the thing is, everything is about the next generation. Whether we have kids or not, we are still impacting the people to come after us. Right? And so is the way I could have all the success, but then am I leaving seeds of bitterness and hurting people along the way? Because then they're just going to beget the same actions towards other people. Or am I showing and being a model of how to love to other people so they can love better too? Right? Love isn't easy. In my mind, true love is about loving the person when they're the most difficult to love.
Yeah. I heard a quote recently where it's like, I don't remember exactly, but it's basically like, love me at my worst, because that's when I need it the most. I think it's like along the lines of that. Yeah. But yeah, no, I do agree. I think this goes to something I've been like learning about more recently, and that is the unconditional parts of love.
Exactly.
Right. And this is something because I actually believe that a lot of love is conditional, but I think certain phases of love is unconditional. So, for instance, if you have a kid and you decide to bring a child into this world, you have to love this kid unconditionally. They come out with value, right? Just the fact that they're born holds value and holds weight, and you should take care of them. And you should love and care for them. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe in the future when they're doing other things, there's other things that you could add conditions to, right?
Yeah.
But initially, like, that's how you have to treat it, because kids, especially kids and babies, they're so malleable.
Right.
And so many things could change in the way they process things in their mind if you don't show them that love. But also, I think, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast, is that when you're a kid, you don't fully, and baby at that, you don't fully understand the nuances of what's going on and how it affects you. And,
right.
Like you don't learn. Like, for instance, let's say, I hear this example a lot. Let's say the baby's crying, it's hungry, but you just fed it. But the baby wants to eat more, and you're like, but I just fed this baby. I probably shouldn't feed it again, right? Like, we just fed it.
Yeah.
But in the baby's mind, because the baby doesn't really understand what's going on, they're like, oh, I'm not being fed. My parent is right here, but I'm not being fed. That must mean that I'm not loved, or they don't care about me that much.
Yeah.
And that's something that could follow the baby, like, onto adulthood. And then you don't understand why you feel sometimes like you need validation or acceptance, because then you didn't get that love when you're really, really, just a baby.
And then, that baby grows up to a person, and then they might have to go through some broken relationships and hurt some people on the way. And who's at fault? No, I don't think anyone's at fault, but I think we, as like future parents or mentors or teachers or whatever it is, we should learn to take accountability for that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because if I'm here raising this child, I'm here speaking to this person, whatever it is, and I speak to them and treat them in a way that falls short of a certain standard of love, then they're going to get that same actions. Yeah. So I believe in putting that accountability on myself to make sure, like, all right, let me offer to you what is truly needed, so then you can hopefully repeat a pattern of love and excellence.
Yeah, I agree. And now, I don't plan on having kids, but I do believe in treating the youth like that, in that way. Before, I used to just think like, oh man, this person's kind of a shit person. Like, it's kind of their fault. And the more I've learned about people and the more I hear people's stories, I'm like, oh crap, you just grew up in a poor situation.
Exactly.
And that's your just outcome of your experiences and your environment. And that's unfortunate sometimes. And that allows me more empathy for them.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm fortunate enough to be okay. Like, unfortunately, like, you have some healing that you need to go through, but it's not your fault.
Yeah.
And as unfortunate as that is, that allows me to see everything through a different lens, Yeah. So I kind of want to ask you, because I noticed that you mentioned this whole cycle of growing up and basically breaking trauma, right? What was the things that you had to go through when you were younger?
It's a great question. I mean, my family, there was a lot of cycles and patterns of divorce. Now, everything is good and peaceable and reconciled in our family now, but I talk about it from an objective state of view, seeing and understanding, like, okay, divorce is a really sad thing on kids, and my now wife, like, she actually went through a divorce and experienced one in 2020, so not very long ago. And there'd be moments when I see, like, oh man, you're growing through some of the things that I had to grow through when I was younger. Now everyone reacts differently to it, but what I've seen is that divorce steals a child's identity. Where people feel safe and confident. A person really knows themselves when they're willing to be able to express themselves and understand, like, it's cool to be expressive. It's cool to be open. That takes true courage. That takes true confidence, right? And divorce can really rob a child of feeling safe to just be, whether it means being fun and joyful and jovial, wherever situation that they're in, or just, being okay and comfortable to feel sad and express that sadness, right? And divorce makes the child feel unsafe to be able to do that. And I think that was a big thing for me. So, one person might feel unsafe to become intimate. and another person might feel unsafe to be in the absence of intimacy. And I found myself very much on that spectrum. So a lot of times when I was growing up, I was bouncing from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, seeking something that I thought would kind of complete me. And it never did that. It actually only just drained me and drained my energy and drained a lot of like kind of like the path of my purpose in my career too, right? The healing process really came through meditation and visualization a lot. Like I'm very big on like mental health and the science behind it. And one thing that I love is this concept of neuroplasticity, where the brain is actually a lot more malleable than we think. And if we learn mastery of our own thoughts and our thought world, then we can actually rewire ourselves to become who it is that we're supposed to become. Because my belief is that it is everyone's divine spiritual right to be mentally healthy and stable and peaceable. I don't believe that life circumstances will ever be stable, but I do believe that you can be stable in here no matter what is going on, right? And that just takes a lot of visualization and healing. And one kind of pathway that was really beneficial for me was my father is now deceased, so that in a lot of ways made things easier. But to be able to sit and visualize him loving on me and raising me or saying the things to me that I needed to hear at specific times of my childhood, right? So there's really levels to it, and it's very important. Like the first level to healing is remembering or trying to visualize and conceptualize your parents showing up for you and all of that. And then coming to acceptance of like, okay, my parents are imperfect. So I actually need to learn how to reparent myself now.
Yeah, no, I actually have been looking into that a lot. And, it's funny because, so they say that the part of your brain which has memory is separate from the part of your brain that has feelings. Mm-hmm. So typically, this happens pretty often actually, and people don't even realize it. So let's say something really bad happens to you.
Yeah.
For instance, for me, it was like growing up with parents who were always fighting, right? Got divorced, that got messy. And as a child, while I was going through it, it was terrible times.
Right.
You know what I mean? I cannot deny that it was completely terrible for me to see everything that I had seen. And to be forced to pick a side is insane as like a 8-year-old kid, Mm-hmm. But now as an adult, it's funny because I look back at it, I'm like, oh, that was kind of funny. Like, oh, it's weird times.
Yeah.
I look at it very differently. And why do I now not have such a like intense, fearful emotion about what happened?
Right.
And it's because your brain allows you to do that.
Yeah.
You could literally disassociate that emotion that you felt at the time mm-hmm. with like another feeling. But then you first have to identify it.
Yeah.
And that's difficult. And it's funny because this is I used to be so at fault for this, where I was just hard-headed and I would just believe that nothing really affected me. Right? I just believe that my resilience was just at 110%.
Right.
And you could not affect me whatsoever. So even if I went through bad things as a child, I was like, no, it didn't change who I am. Mm-hmm. But now that I look at under a magnifying glass, I'm like, I think it did.
Yeah.
I think it did affect me in certain ways.
Yeah, that's and I think a lot of men, we go through that's repression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? We're not supposed to suppress our emotions. We're supposed to learn how to govern them. Right? So it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad. Feelings are very interesting, but my philosophy on feelings is that they're just there to help us validate reality, right? Because imagine this, like when you watch a movie and you take the music out, how does it feel?
Lifeless,
right? So, but then what does music do? Music really plays with your emotions in a deep way. So when you see that character on the screen, like professing love, and there's this powerful romantic score, you feel like you're falling in love, mm-hmm. right? So the emotions now validate the reality of that feeling of what's going on in the film. And emotions help kind of imprint memories into us. The more emotionally charged an experience is, the more it stays within our psyche.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like that saying, it's like you won't always remember what people do for you, but you always remember how they make you feel.
100%. Feelings is a language of the spirit. That's why it's like, I always say that it's cool if you feel angry. It's cool if you feel sad. It's just, what is your response physically to it?
Yeah.
You know?
And also, talking about emotions and some emotions being, pushed down deep to where you feel like it doesn't exist. I feel like it always comes out one way or another.
It will.
Yeah. It always comes out one way or another,
Yeah.
And to me, emotions are there because they're necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think, going back to the whole music thing, and lately it's crazy. I've been learning that the phrase that it takes a village, it was because, obviously we all used to live in villages and we all hung out and took care of each other.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that we've lost now that we've kind of live in a society where we, separate each other in these buildings and stuff like that.
Right.
But, music was, before we became a society where we could speak, it was like a way of getting everyone together.
Yeah.
Like you would play something and then people would get together. Right. And very similar things, like people would play, certain kinds of music that would evoke certain kind of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, anger used to be a thing because you had to go out and defend yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like you needed the adrenaline to go up and you need to be hyped, and then they would play like battle cry war music, and then you go out there and now you're at your senses are high and you could go hunt.
Yeah.
Right? You could do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I think now that we are no longer in that kind of society, we still feel those feelings, but now we put it towards different things.
Exactly.
And I think it's just now learning how to navigate that feeling, right?
And that's why I say governance of your feelings is really important, right?
Yeah.
Because there will be situations like, hey, like, you need to negotiate some kind of contract, or someone's trying to like catcall your girl or whatever. All right, I'm feeling aggression. Now now do I have the capacity to govern? Is this appropriate time to express that aggression?
Yeah.
Right? A lot of times, like you said, we're not living in survival mode anymore. So a lot of these feelings of deep fear or deep anger, they're not as useful, right? But that's just a result of society and technology evolving faster than our own biochemistry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a lot of life is just learning how to navigate. Okay, cool. What is appropriate response to this situation? And my belief is, again, do everything with love. And most times when someone bugs you or something bothers you, it's just a test of your love, right? And so am I able to love this person even though they're being difficult? Am I able to love myself even though I'm being difficult, right? Because a lot of it too comes down to, do I love myself? Do I love myself through my mistakes? Do I love myself through my pitfalls? Can I let go of things and progress forward? Can I approach myself with the same grace that I approach those who I love around me too?
Oh, you're right. I agree with that 100%. And, going back to that and you finding yourself like healing through all the cycles of divorce that had came with your family.
Yeah.
And the relationships that can fill that void that you're looking to fill.
Mm-hmm.
At what point in the meditation and the visualization did all that change?
It really started to change when I brought God into the picture. Because then I kind of thought like, hey, there's a being who created everything. And when you look at the world and you look at just nature, right, you realize how perfectly set nature was. Like, if the earth was any closer to the sun, we wouldn't exist. Plants wouldn't exist. Think of it like this too. Again, I'm a musician, so I always process things through like audio and sound.
Yeah.
The only reason we hear music the way that we hear it is two reasons: the way our brain is situated to process it and the anatomy of our ears, and also the air pressure of earth and the oxygen and the way it's all situated. It's the exact perfect atmosphere for music and sound waves to pass through. That's why when you go underwater, music doesn't what happens is that the molecules are so tight that the music sound waves happen so fast that they dissipate before they can reach our ears. That's why everything sounds weird.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dang, like the way the world was orchestrated is so perfect. And then I thought about, well, maybe humans and my parents weren't perfect, but if nature and God in my heart is so perfect, then let me start to imagine him loving on me the way I needed to be loved, and let my confidence start to come from that and my relationship in there. And that's when things really, really started to shift, because I was like, man, now I'm deriving my confidence in my being from the thing that created me too.
Okay, damn.
Yeah.
And that's what helped you change. That's awesome.
That was the biggest. Yeah, I mean, I think like rebuilding my relationships with my parents and stuff. That was a big starter point. But then that is then like that planted the seeds. But that's what became the big breakthrough.
So how did you realize that had changed in the relationship that you're in now? Because if you were seeking for something to fill that void and you hadn't so many times, did you have any doubt when it came to your current wife?
What was interesting is that I think I became so confident that I actually had sometimes a hard time then being empathetic. Right. And so I became so confident, so empowered that I was like, well, why don't other people have the same kind of level? And then that's when I started to learn, okay, there's levels to this thing. There's levels to life, right? You can build your own self-love so much, but then you're going to get tested on that. And you're going to approach the level where you have to learn mastery of loving others. And so now, do I love myself enough to be humble enough to be like, okay, I need to be more empathetic now. And that's not kind of the space I'm in right now, where I'm learning, hey, she's imperfect, and I'm definitely far from perfect. She's a lot better than me in many ways. But when she falls short of my expectations, how am I going to approach it? And the biggest thing, the craziest thing is I learned I can either be corrective and directive and treat her like most parents treat children, or I can be loving, patient, and kind. And I've noticed when I took route loving, patient, and kindness, and even just was chill, I'm like, all right, cool, whatever, you know? Then actually she grew even more and would not do that same behavior again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, dang. A lot of times we think that the easy route is the correct route. Do this better.
Yeah.
And that actually restricts and restrains people. And no one really wants to be told what to do, especially in this day and age.
That's true. That's true. I've definitely tried it both ways.
Yeah.
And I'm single for a reason. Let's just say that. But I mean, I like hearing people's approach, you know, because I don't think, you know, when I get people on here, it's not about giving general advice, you know.
Yeah.
It's definitely like, this is how it works within the confines of your relationship. And if there's certain people that feel like they could use this, then so be it. Yeah, use it.
Exactly.
See how it works for you, right?
Exactly.
I think that's what it is too, is that a lot of things in relationships, we're literally just testing things on another person, right? It's literally just trial and error and learning as we go.
Yeah.
And I think what you said earlier really aligns with that, which is, you said that she wasn't the person that you thought you were going to be with. And that's something I've learned really early on, is to have this vision of this person. Typically, it almost never aligns with the person that you end up with.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because like people end up pigeonholing themselves into this vision of this person, right? Where it's like, I need this person who's this height, maybe in complexion, which is crazy. That has these hobbies, these physical features. And it's like, whoa, how do you know that's what you want? Have you met this person? Because it sounds like they're just in your head, in your imagination.
Yeah.
So how would you know?
It's crazy. And you know what? You bring up a really good point, and I think it's very important for any pursuit in life. Neither Sydney and I, at the time we met, wanted to be in a relationship, nor wanted to really get married. I was 27 now, or 27 then. I'm 30 now. And back then I really thought like, oh, cool. You know what? I just gone through my healing process through a lot of really bad relationships that really drove my mind and my psyche like almost to the ground. Like I'm talking about like,
oh wow,
terrible depression, suicidal thoughts, patterns, the whole thing. Like my whole head was broken, my whole heart was broken, everything was just like, you know. And I finally crossed that mark of feeling healed. So there was two things going on inside of me. It was like, one, I don't want to go through that again. So let me be very slow and intentional. And two, there's just something that kind of happened. And like I mentioned, when I crossed that meditative threshold of aligning everything to like God, just something naturally in my heart was like, I don't really need this anymore. And I felt really good. I felt really happy to be in a space where I didn't feel like I needed a relationship. It's just this very steady part of my heart. And I felt so grounded and no desire to pursue nothing. I loved my space and I hadn't been there in a long time. So I had in my head, well, I'll get married when I'm 35, maybe. I'm down. I totally let go of the whole thing. And when I let go of it, is then all of a sudden it got thrust into my life.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
usually what happens, I feel like.
And I'm learning, like, they always say be in the present and in the now. And what does that really mean? To me, it really means just be so in love with what it is that you have now and learn to maximize everything that you have in your life, whether it's your job, whether it's your family, whatever it is. Nothing's perfect, but most of us keep our minds and our eyes and our viewpoint on what we don't like, and we forget to meditate and reflect on what we do like. And this is a huge part of why I know our marriage is going to succeed. We both make sure in the morning or whenever we have free time, especially if we're angry or have an issue between one another, a disagreement, we always make sure to meditate upon the good moments and think about what we love about each other, right? So a lot of times when I've like, if we had an issue or something, and it's been very small, we're still super in like the honeymoon phase, but conflicts still come up, you know, like anything. A lot of times I just go back and I'll sit and visualize, and a vision I come back a lot on is when she was giving her vows to me. And I remember vividly what it looked like and what it felt like. And just that changes my heart so much that then whatever is bugging me in the moment dissipates. I'm like, all right, bet. I know what this is for. Let's keep going.
No, and that's actually so important too, because I've learned to do that just every day, like in the moment, you know. I did it yesterday when I was out, and I used to just write it in a journal, just like a gratitude journal, like 3 things that I'm grateful for. And now I'll just do it in the present too. Yesterday I was out with a couple friends, and we were celebrating a birthday, having a couple drinks, listening to music. And I looked around, I was like, oh, look at my beautiful friends, you know, we get to hang out and enjoy each other's presence. And we're here. This is such a luxury to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And I just felt way more grateful, way more happy, like almost instantaneously. And that's how powerful like thoughts are.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't even think about it. It sounds like woo, but not really. I think thoughts govern a lot of your emotions, really. Yeah. And if you allow yourself to have positive self-talk, it changes you in that direction. Definitely. And it's very similar to going back to what we were talking about earlier, how we're not in survival mode. Mm-hmm. And I think back then we had to focus on the negative things because that thing could have killed you. Yeah. You know, and no longer, I mean, we live in a place that's typically pretty safe, right? We don't have to worry about our livelihood every day. Thank God, you know. Mm-hmm. But we haven't gone out of that mindset where people are so honed in on the negative, that they allow maybe like an incident that's like 10 seconds long to ruin their day. You know, I had something happen to one of my buddies the other day. He got into a car accident, minor, right? Like at a stop, he like bumped into someone because he wasn't looking before he like went. So minor accident, no one got hurt, you know, minor breakage on the cars. Nothing crazy, but it festered in his mind the whole day. You could tell it just ruined his whole day. Wow. You know? Yeah. And I'm like over here saying, well, at least you're not hurt. Yeah. But all you could think about is, well, you know, this thing just fucked up my day. You know? And it's crazy because it no longer serves us to think like that, but we still do. Yeah. And I think we need to reframe that and start thinking about the positive sides of things. And it's so easy because I start thinking this more as of late. I do think life is really about the silver linings. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many bad things that happen, and you could really ruminate on that. Oh, yeah. But what does it do for you? And I think aside from just making you feel worse, it actually makes you sick. It does. You know, people stress out, and stress causes so many illnesses. Yeah. Right? Like now we know like stress is terrible for you. Mm-hmm. Right? Not saying like you shouldn't have no stress because, you know, I think there's a reason for everything. Right? Yeah. Like stress is there to make sure that you can survive in certain moments. Right? But you don't need to be stressed 24/7. No one does. And I think now it's like you have to tell people to focus on the good things. And I think what people think is that things should just kind of pan out the way it pans out. Mm-hmm. Like you think positively, so therefore, you know, you have positive things happen to you. But you also, sometimes positive things don't happen to you. You have to find the positivity in these things, right? Mm-hmm. So for instance, my dad's sick, and while he's sick, I have to think, well, thank God he's still here. Right. You know, he's sick, but he's not dead.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, I still have my chance to like hang out with them and talk to them and tell them that I love them. And I think that's like the silver lining of that. You know, I haven't been able to catch up with you in years, but now it's like, okay, silver lining is we can catch up.
We're here.
And this is like accelerated.
Yeah.
So it's cool. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I can't say if we saw each other very often that we would have caught up in depth like this.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's what it is, because you don't know what life is gonna give you, right? You could only hope for the best, right? And prepare for the worst. And even when things get bad, yeah, it goes back to like the silver lining of things, right? Finding that little slice of positivity in maybe a very imperfect moment.
Yeah. Joy is a choice,
Yeah.
right? It's
It
completely a choice. And this is not to say it's easy. It takes time. We all have our weakness and we have all those things. I love the word you used, fester. Because I think stress and negative thoughts and negative thinking patterns, it's like a disease. And if you feed it, the more you feed it, the more it's just going to become that. And you will become that. Whatever you think about the most is what you become, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can keep your mind, you will be tested. Life is filled with so many tests. But if you can learn mastery of keeping your heart and your mind upon the joyful things in life, you will succeed in every circumstance in your life. And that's what draws people around you. People love to be around others who are joyful.
Yeah. And okay, so I kind of want to go off on a tangent a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's where the internet fails us, is that it connects us to the most negative people that probably would not have a chance to be connected to us.
Right.
And it becomes like a cesspool of these negative people where like they will attack each other, and other people who might feel positively and somehow like they feel triggered by what someone had said online to join the conversation.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really lead to anything, and which is why I've talked about this before too. I think cyberbullying is kind of worse than regular bullying. You know, because like regular bullying, a lot of the times, if we're talking about the physical kind, it's just done once they're not around.
Right.
The cyberbullying could literally be 24/7 because they have access to you somehow. And also it stays in your head. You think about these words that fill up your mind and it can't escape you. And what's crazy too is that typically these people who are that hateful or negative, they come from a background where they grew up with hate and negativity.
Yeah.
Which continues to breed that same thing. And that's unfortunate, because if you think about it in terms like that, it's like, oh man, it just sucks because you had a bad childhood.
Right.
Like you don't want to be like, no one fucking wants to be like that. No one.
Yeah.
You know, and it came from someplace and it's been brought down to many, many generations and it's still here. And I think it's up to the people like you and me to take a step back and be like, do we have to react in a way where we're just adding to this negativity?
Yeah.
Or can we take a step back and think, okay, maybe I can't fix this, but at least I won't contribute to it.
Right.
You know, I was out yesterday and there was this guy at the bar. He was really, really drunk, right? Kept on bumping into everyone. And at one point I was just like, hey, can you stop? Sorry, we're here. But he kept on bumping to everyone. And I just thought, okay, well, he's drunk. He's not, this is not out of malice. He's not trying to hurt anyone, you know? I could have really been aggressive with it. I mean, the thought was in my head, but I took a step back and, you know, I let myself feel it. I'm like, okay, what should I do here?
Yeah.
You know, do I make things worse than I really should be?
Right.
Or do I just remove myself from the situation and not have to worry about it?
That's really it.
Yeah. And
You
as
know?
soon as I left, I was like, okay, I had a great time. Didn't have to think about the guy anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but that happens to so many people where it's like, yeah, it festers and then it blows up to something that it really doesn't need to. And I think a lot of the times, though, when people are in those situations where little things like that bug them to that degree, I think they're so emotionally charged already that they just needed something to let them off.
Man, look, like I lived in LA in the thick of 2020. You know, like
Yikes.
yeah, like the George Floyd riots happened right on my street. Like there was a Target not even a block away from me that got destroyed, and I was watching tanks and stuff go up in front. And it's interesting to pay attention to what was going on in society, right? Like most of my career has been in the R&B industry, so predominantly like a black side of music, right? My wife is black too, and it's very interesting because of the internet what negativity does and how it festers ignorance.
Oh yeah.
All right. And so I saw a lot of people who had no authority to speak on a topic jump into a conversation and become like know-it-alls in certain things. And because they chose like, oh, I'm going to feed into the negativity of what's going on. But then people don't really know what's actually truthfully going on. And so I saw like, dang, the best way to combat difficulty in society when it comes to dealing with the loud negative voices is treat that with silence and don't even give your energy towards that.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way. Being on the internet and having like a podcast where like, yeah, you will attract people who are trolls or just negative. Yeah. For a while, I was like, damn, I could just keep on berating this person all day. And I'm like, wait a minute, why am I doing this?
Right.
Why am I doing this? This person's not here to have a discussion. They're not going to change their mind. It's not making my day better. It's definitely not making their day better. So like, what's the point of this? And yeah, I'm guilty of like joining in that. And that's why I had to remove myself and understand like, okay, there's more to this than it meets the eye. Like to me at first I was like, oh, it's just harmless. I'm just like fucking trolling this person. But at the same time, like, is it really that harmless though? I think there's a certain degree where you feel like you're in control, but it's so subtle that you don't even realize sometimes you're losing that control.
Silence is the best weapon towards negativity.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think silence is great. I think lately I've also come to ask why. Yeah. I think that's really, really big. And I think a lot of the times the reason for the person, it just unfolds on its own. Once you start kind of just asking why. And I think maybe, well, I can only probably speak on the male experience because, we're dudes, but yeah, I think enough people just want to be heard. And if you give them an outlet, it's like, holy shit. Oh, that's why you're so mad. Yeah.
See, you have a right philosophy because you see people as humans. The problem is like we have a lot of inflation. I guess we're going a little political. This is kind of fine. I think we have a lot of inflated issues in our country because people don't understand that no one wants to be proven wrong. And if someone is coming in with a combative nature, they're coming in to fight. They're not coming in to listen. So if we're just trying to now fight fire with fire, all we're going to do is solidify each other's stances. But what we really need in our society is for us to be able to come across and intermingle. And most people just want to be heard. It takes such deep, deep, deep emotional maturity to just sit and listen to a person who doesn't align with your viewpoints. But if we learn to humble ourselves and just let this person who clearly needs to be heard, clearly is hurt, clearly is frustrated with something or fearful about something, the moment we just give someone else a microphone for a little while, then finally they'll come to that point and be, okay, I said what I said. Now I'm curious to hear your viewpoint, right? And to me, that's love. Again, that's another standard of love that I think most people in our society don't understand.
Yeah, I agree. And I think hopefully we get to that point, by having these conversations. Like I'm so open to hearing people out now. Yeah. When I have the space to, because it does get draining at certain times. But I also understand that the more you do it, the more resilient you become to it. Exactly. And the easier you pick up on certain things. Because now I'm always like, are you okay? Yeah. Like, are you good? I'm not saying it in a way where I'm trying to demean you, but like, no, I just want to make sure you're okay because it seems like there's something there that's causing you to feel like agitated, angry, all these emotions that for whatever reason you feel like you need to come at me for. So like, let me ask you if you're all right because I'm not here to try to hurt you. Not at all. Yeah. I think we actually have the same intentions. We're here to have a good time. We're here to make the most of our day. 100%. So like, why ruin it over something that could be easily ignored or at least easily talked about, right? Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's like people don't understand how much it really affects you. I think this comes from so many places because if you really look at it under a microscope, right? And this is what I've been doing a lot more recently because I think what I used to do is I would ignore the science. Right. So that's good. Yeah. But now, if I'm having a bad day and I'm like, oh, is it really affecting me? And I'll look at certain habits of mine that should be clockwork. For instance, like let's say driving, right? I'll like go into a parking spot, like after if I have like a bad day at work or something. And I'm like, well, why did I park like kind of crooked, you know?
Right.
And it's like, all right, I forget where I left my wallet, or I look at the time and it's, oh shit, I'm like late. Why am I not thinking these things? And you don't understand how much space it takes up in your head.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't allow you to function like properly. It actually does affect you so much more than you think it does.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's like, how do we get past that? Right? I believe it is to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Right. I think
I agree.
Hearing about people's stories where, you went through your process, because I want to get into that too, by the way, where you were so low that you've had suicidal thoughts, that you can come out the other side healthier and better and healed. I think people only know that that's possible by hearing about it from others, because when you're in that spot, you feel like there's no one else but you that's like this.
Yeah, definitely.
You feel very alone, and that's probably one of the symptoms.
Yeah.
It's feeling like no one understands, and you are by yourself, and you have to deal with this by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the best ways to do it is with other people, and it goes back to that village saying, it takes a community and a good support system to kind of help you out there. And I hear people talk about this all the time, and we very much encourage this, but therapy is great.
Yeah.
Right. But therapy is relatively new.
Right.
So who are the therapists back then? It was your village. It was your community.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the reason why we need therapists now is because we don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
So there's an occupation that fills that void. Right. So I think, going back to sharing this story, it's like, I would hope that this builds a little community, and it sucks that we have to bond over something so traumatic. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it needs to be, talked about.
Yeah.
So going back to the point where you're at that point in your life that you couldn't fill the void with these relationships, and you felt like you hit rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
What was going through your mind at that time? Like right before that, and then during it, if you can.
I think of the best way to frame this, because it's obviously a lot, but at that time, I was really trying to make it work in music, in my career. There was like little signs of success, but it wasn't there yet. I was still working like a day job and everything. And then, but I still always wanted like this natural desire. There's thoughts that happen up here, and there's thoughts that happen in here. And there's always this in here desire to be in a really beautiful relationship. I loved dating a little too much back then.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean a little too much?
I was the typical person bouncing from relationship to relationship. And like, if I didn't have that in set, then like life wasn't like set. You know what I mean? And especially like those string of relationships between 2018 to 2021, it's like I would get into it and it would be really fun and energetic, and then it would just boom, plummet so fast, and I found myself just so depressed if I felt rejected by a person, right? And I think that's what it really was. It was stemming from this like lack of sense and understanding of myself and who I am and what builds me. So then my emotional state was so tied to then the well-being of this other person that if at any moment I didn't feel like I was being satisfactory to them, or I was helping them, or that they loved me, or that the love was super vibrant in the moment, I would just be really distraught emotionally. And so my emotions were tied to like the success and the feeling of the relationship, right? I was finding my identity in the moods of other people.
And that was continuous with all the relationships that you had during those times?
Yeah. And I noticed it got progressively like worse as I got older. It was crazy.
It got worse.
It was really crazy.
So what was the point where you found you struggled with the most?
I think like the very last relationship before my marriage was one I had in like 2020, crossing over into 2021. That one just like, I remember waking up in bed one day just being like, yeah, I don't want to do this thing anymore. I texted my mentor. That was the one thing that probably helped me. I texted my mentor that day, and he texted back, stay strong, I'm traveling, but I'll come back. And we got to meet and gave me some wise counsel and some wise advice. But that was probably one of the lowest moments of my life completely. You know, I was living like off off of a Biden checks and everything. I didn't really have a job. It was 2020, and nothing was really moving. And then I was just broke up with that girl, and everything was just super low. Like I didn't even want to live back then.
Do you remember when you first had those thoughts? Was it very clear that you were feeling that way? Where you're like, damn. Because to me, I'm trying to imagine it if I were to have thoughts of suicide, if it were to be gradual, or if it's just like one day I feel like this is it. And I would hope to believe that it's gradual, you know, that you could kind of nip in the butt before you think that's actually a real option. Because then it could be preventative, you know?
Right.
And I'm sure the way you felt, it was built up till that point, right? With all these things coming down.
It's hard. It's really hard to say. It's really hard to say. Maybe it was gradual. I just knew like at that moment, it was a lot more real than ones before, right? But then at that time, like I said, I had a really kind mentor, still my mentor now, you know. He's an awesome musician, singer, songwriter, producer, everything. Amazing guy, spiritual leader, awesome. And he kind of framed to me, he's like, okay, I've been seeing you do this whole like meditation thing, and I really love that for you. Let me just suggest to you, like, start to bring in the God component into it and do that. And I'm a dreamer. I love dreams and interpreting my dreams and analyzing my dreams. And I very much believe that God gives us dreams to help us stay on track in life. Example is before my wife and I got married, I had a series about 4 dreams where I was living in Orange County. Right? So backtrack to the timeline. March, we weren't married yet. I had no job offer. I didn't think of anything. Our plan was to stay in LA, live with her dad for a little bit, and be cool. But I had 4 dreams about me hanging out in OC. There's even one dream where I was walking around applying for jobs, and I kept applying for jobs that involved audio. It's like, okay, cool. And then March ends, April happens, we get married on the 5th, and then a week later, I got the job offer to be relocated to Irvine, California. I was like, yo. To me, it's like, that was crazy. Those are 4 dreams that were telling me of where I was going to be in about a month, right? So I remember as I started to meditate, so now we're going back to 2021, as I started to meditate and bring in like, okay, cool. What's my relationship? What's my spiritual life? How can I find love in a more perfect being than my parents? I remember having a very powerful dream where I was in this huge like pool. And I've always loved sports, especially like MMA, Muay Thai. I love training, you know, to me that's great. And that was one way my dad and I would bond, was through sports. He and I would always play like baseball together. I remember in this dream, my dad's now deceased, but he comes and appears to me, and I'm in the pool and I'm training and getting ready for a fight. And he puts his hands on my shoulders in a way that I was like, felt very safe, very grounded. Like he was like my father, yet also my coach, and he's there to support me. And he tells me, he's like, I believe in you. And I remember waking up from that dream and just tears in my face, tears of relief, tears of feelings that I hadn't felt in a very long time, tears of being like, man, there was an element of support that I didn't get from my family for a long time, but I felt it all in that one moment. And I remember through that entire week, for like 7 days at least, just having those tears of release. And I think there was a lot of built up trauma and pain and lack of identity that all of a sudden just got eradicated from me from experiencing like that one dream. Wow. Yeah. And I know that having had meditated on my relationship with God primed my mind to be able to receive that dream. And when that happened, then just naturally, it was like it was very strange. It's very subtle, but supernatural at the same time. My heart felt grounded. And I started to notice not so much desire for love and relationships. And I went on a few dates, and I didn't get the same kind of like, oh my gosh, I need to like bring this person in my life type thing. Like,
Yeah, like attach yourself to the person.
Yeah, everything there just became, it was literally a miracle, and everything just became very more like subtle and calm, and I felt a lot more driven, and then my career, and my life, and my friends, and my relationship, and my friends, and my family just started getting better and better and better, and now we're here, 3 years later.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
You know?
I'm glad that I've mentioned this a lot, and I think this is going back to finding silver linings.
Yeah.
Things, right? Like I'm not a religious person by any means, but I do believe that there is a purpose for it.
Yeah.
And I think in scenarios like in your case, especially, where you consider not being of this world anymore.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that's great that you found something that got you out of it,
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like so many people find reasons to just hate on it. And I'm just like, why? If it helps people, like, what the hell is your problem? You don't have to participate in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, let you do you and let them do them, know?
I'm not telling anyone to go,
No.
like.
No, and this is the exact reason why we have these conversations.
Yeah.
Is that this is your experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're asking for, your story.
Yeah.
And that's it, and this is true to you.
Yeah.
Right? That's the beautiful part.
And thank you for that, because I think a lot of times I am almost like a little fearful to share the word God, because I feel like it's such a loaded word right now, but it's just the most honest thing I can like express. But I appreciate that you give me like a safe space to be able to share that, because that's truly, if I took that out of the equation in our conversation today, I'd be completely lying to you.
Yeah, and I truthfully believe that these kind of conversations between two people who have not the same viewpoint needs to exist.
Exactly.
I think that we have so many different ways of living life. Like, why only spend it with people who completely live the same life as you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do you get differing opinions? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
How do you understand life on a broader scale if all you do is live life according to yourself?
Yeah.
And, I think, going back to the whole 2020 thing, there's a lot of people who became very divided in their viewpoints.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about racial things or politics. It became even about religious things too.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, oh, if you don't see eye to eye with me, like, we can't even talk. We can't even be friends. And I think that's so crazy.
Yeah.
I think that's so wild. And I allow people the opportunity to speak no matter what walk of life you came from, and I think there's like a chance for us to hold conversations and be honest with each other. And, when you just said that right now, where you're like, you're almost fearful of saying the word God, that sucks.
Yeah.
That you have to have that feeling that you have to hold back on a word like that.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that's crazy, because that's your strong belief, and the fact that you feel not safe at times to say it is crazy.
It's a very weird space. You obviously know I'm Christian. The Christian world is a very weird space to be in, especially as like a musician and a creator, because I'm always going to, like, as I grow in my career even more and do bigger and bigger things, I'm always going to be answering to two different battles. There'll be one side where if I use the word God, people will feel hateful towards that. And that's cool. That's fine. The hardest one is then people on the other end will be like, well, why didn't you say this enough? Why didn't you go deeper into it? Why didn't you try to like invite him to a Bible study? I'm like,
damn.
And I'm like, guys, it's bigger than that. And if I'm supposed to be a being of love and I'm supposed to demonstrate love, those things aren't love. Who comes to God by seeing the guy on the street that's like, you're all going to hell? That brings no one to it. Like my wife, she works at the Spectrum.
I was curious about that. I was gonna say, does that really work?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
you mean
not.
the crazy dude with the fucking sign that says like, you will be condemned to hell if you don't come over here?
We all see him in a Huntington Beach.
Yep, driving that truck around.
End of the world. Da, da, da. I'm like, yo, that you don't bring people to a place through hate and fear.
Yeah.
You just don't, you understand putting events and stuff. You make things look joyful and attractive. And that's really what it is. And if I'm going to model things that are like scary, disciplinary, restrictive, fearful, which that's not what it's about at all, then I'm messing up the whole system of things.
So how does it get to that point? Why obviously, going back to like, there's a reason. You could give a reason for everything and the silver lining.
Yeah.
And to me, maybe the silver lining is like, yeah, that is what you're not supposed to do. That's
Right.
what it shows you, right? But I'm wondering how they get to that point, And I to me, and maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a mental health thing.
Yeah, I'd venture to say that those people aren't actually Christians.
Oh,
Wow,
that's wild. I've never heard that take before.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd venture to say like a lot of people don't understand spiritual life. The spiritual world is a real, truthful thing that you cannot just put in your mind, and a lot of people just kind of like formulate ideas in their head. But when you really, like for me personally, when you really experience like just being touched by God, when you really experience like that dream that I shared with you, where there was so much love in that dream by like, seeing my father in it, that literally a grown man was crying for a whole week.
Wow, it was a week. Holy
Yeah,
crap.
bro, that's a real thing. And so when you experience true love, because my opinion is that God is love, when you experience true love, the goodness of that thing will make you want to be a better person. It will not want you to make you want to hate. It will make you put you in this position where you're like, dude, I experienced this thing and it's so cool and the love is so powerful and it's so fun and so happy. I just want to invite all my homies, If they don't like it, cool. If they do like it, even better. But I don't need to like tell anyone like, they're going to hell. Like,
so you don't need to tell anyone they're going to hell.
Yeah.
Yes,
so the reason I say why anyone that has a modus of hate and hate speech to it is not a Christian is because, in my opinion, they've never experienced true love. And so if you haven't experienced love, and again, God is love, if you haven't experienced it, then you haven't experienced God. So you haven't really been truly met spiritually just yet. So I hope for those people, I pray for those people that like, that will come to experience that. But yeah, there's a lot of Christians out there that are really not Christians.
Yeah, the people on the street condemning people to hell, probably not the best way to recruit people to a religion,
No.
And I do view it very similarly to catcalling, right? Where it's like, I don't do it, so I can't tell you if it works, but if I were to assume anything, I would say it doesn't work, but for whatever reason, people feel compelled to do it that way. And I see the harms of it because it paints certain people in a bad light, right?
Yeah.
In the case of the guy condemning people to hell, it paints religion in a bad light. In the case in point of a catcaller, it paints men in a bad light.
Right.
Right. And it's unfortunate because we have to sometimes face the judgment of others, not even because of us.
Right.
Like I'm not the person catcalling, but if all men are trash, well, fuck, I guess I'm part of that group.
Now we fall in that generalization.
Yeah,
Oh,
unfortunate, right? But then we got, I think there's two ways to approach it, right? The wrong way, which is, oh shit, if you think that of me, I might as well perpetuate that idea further,
Right.
right? Or I'll fight against that stigma, and I'll show you why not all men are shit.
Yeah. I don't believe in like nice guys finish last. I think again, tying everything always back to love. Love is a very subtle, simple, quiet weapon, right? Because the guy catcalling is very obvious and very clear on the street, and it pisses people off immediately. But the nice, kind, gentleman type vibe is a lot more subtle. But with the repetitions, you show other women, you show other men, you show other people, okay, there are gentlemen left in the world, right? But it's not as quick and not as visceral as a catcall. But I believe like that's why love is a very subtle weapon, but done in consistency, it can completely change the world.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely not a instant gratification type of thing, just being like a nice guy. But unfortunately, we also have a negative stigma against the nice guy too, right? It's because some guys who portray themselves as the nice guy have ulterior motive.
Right.
There's a literal subreddit, and it's called like r/like nice guys.
It's so funny.
Which is just about stories of these guys who like tried to be, not try to be in the friend zone, but they're in the friend zone, and then when they try to make the move, the girl's like, "Oh no, you just like a friend to me," and then they go off, right? They get triggered, and you're like, "You're a fucking bitch. You're a slut. Like you don't even fucking care about people. That's why you're fucking single." And you're like, "Oh shit, that's who you really are the entire time."
Yeah.
You know, you just put on a mask to kind of get into my circle.
The catcall guy with a better strategy.
Yeah, exactly. It's also the catfish guy, but with the personality.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
And that does happen. And for me, you know, I used to just read those stories and just judge because it was fun. But now
that does sound kind of fun.
But now I'm like, at the same time, I want to understand these things better.
Yeah.
Because if it is someone in my circle, like I hope to be able to have a conversation and be like, hey, you know, I don't think your approach is the best. And maybe you got to be real with yourself because, you know, if you're so nice, would you have really done that? And
Bro, that just sounds desperate.
it does. I think that's where it comes from, though. It comes from a place of desperation sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, I think it comes from a place of wanting validation from that person that you can't get it from. So you'll try to get it in any possible way, which is let me just try to be nice and hopefully they'll give me validation for being there for them. You know, and I think not the best approach for the most part, because going back to especially romantic relationships, right?
Yeah.
I think you should be very upfront and maybe not like clear cut upfront, but at least like hint that direction. You know, I think too many people play the nice guy role and they're surprised to get friend zoned.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. What are you expecting?
Yeah. What are you expecting? You know, people who come on way too strong. I mean, there are cases where it works out. Right? I'm not saying that there's like a one size fits all for every scenario, but generally, if you come on way too strong, unless you're just that desirable of a person in general, it's probably not going to work out the way that you want it to work out. Just like the catcall. Right?
Yeah.
Like if I were to say if there's a scenario where the catcall would work, it would be if you're crazy attractive, probably famous, so they kind of have an idea who you are anyways. Right. Then maybe there's a chance.
Sure. Perhaps.
But for the general population, probably not the best way to do it.
No, definitely not. It's so funny because as you talk about like catcall or coming on too strong, like all these like pickup culture, right? We have pickup culture. I just see all these in my head. I just get this thought of all the interest is about getting puss. You know, like that's all, like that's where the mentality is. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's a component of romance, right? But I think the issue is when we prioritize that above all things. And we all have moments when we're out or we're traveling or whatever it is, and like that's perfect. Go for it. Do what you want to do. Yeah. But then, why are you wanting to be in a long-term relationship with someone? Like, what's really the true thing that you want to get out of being in a relationship? And I think a lot of people don't know. And I can say from my own perspective, back in the day, I personally didn't know. It was just kind of like, I want it, right? It makes me feel good. But then there's a lot of things that make me feel good that aren't necessarily beneficial for me, right? So I think people have to learn, like, dating is not easy. Love is not easy. And as you get more intimate with a person, it can become more difficult. So if you're framing a relationship based upon like, well, it makes me feel good and that's why I want to be in the relationship, and the majority of the time I feel good. Listen, feelings are the most temporary thing, right? And if you don't want to bounce from relationship to relationship, then there has to be something more to it. So that's why, like, to me, being in a relationship is 100% about purpose. Like, does this woman that I'm with make me a better man, and does she help fuel me into becoming who it is I'm supposed to be, and do I do the other for her, right? And I think that's why I felt so confident and safe to get into marriage, because I didn't get married because that was anything on my checklist. I didn't get married because I thought marriage would make me feel good. I actually understood, having seen so many divorces, it will not feel good a lot of the times, right? I didn't get married for the attraction of it, right? I didn't even really fully process in my mind that I would be married this young in my life and this early in my life. But what made me feel so safe and confident in this decision, and I know 1,000% it is the best thing I've done in my life, what made me feel safe in it was seeing that this person and us being together in a union would launch us into our purpose and launch us into our destiny, that's when I was like, yeah, I want to invest myself in that and commit to this thing.
So you saw it as an investment.
Yeah. Yeah. Because marriage is a sacrifice. Every relationship is a sacrifice. Like I said, a good mentor this pulled out to me. He's like, we all have crooked nails inside of us, and your partner is there to pull those nails out of you and to help renew your heart, to help us love better, to help us be better people, to help us encourage others more, to help teach us to have more capacity for patience and kindness and empathy and destiny and career and whatever it is. In my mind, that sacrifice in marriage makes us more eloquent and better candidates to achieve more and more success in our lives and leave a deeper and more loving legacy.
Never thought about it like that. Definitely,
Right.
for sure. Because, well, I mean, my stance on the marriage is I don't want to get married, but I also don't oppose to it, right? Like,
Yeah.
if people want to get married, I'm happy for you. I love, you know, and
Right.
I'll cheer for you guys. I hope that, like, you don't become part of the statistic, you know?
Right.
As everyone knows, I don't think anyone is ignorant of that.
Right.
And I think what it is, too, is, like, educating yourself about the approaches to marriage, you know, and going back to your approaches, like purpose and investment. I think those things have to be thought about because, like how you mentioned, feelings are fleeting. You know, I think that is probably one of the most quick ways to expedite your divorce is to get married based off of a feeling.
Right.
And I actually talked about this a little bit with the last guest that we had on, my friend Lester, and he mentioned, you know, arranged marriages and how I think statistically most of them last or compared to regular marriages. And that's because the foundation of which they base their marriage on is like, yeah, we got to make this thing work.
Exactly.
Right. And then all the love and all those feelings come as we're building this together, you know? And I think that's a very interesting approach. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I mean, it exists and it, you know, some people make it work. But going back to the dating thing and your purpose and your intent with it, because some people, they do it just to have sex. And again, nothing wrong with that, right? We are humans and we have desires, right? And lust is like one of them.
Yeah.
And I think what it is going back to what you were saying too, is like, in order to make this culture a healthier culture, you have to also prioritize the other person that you're committing this act with. Right?
That's good. That's true.
Because when you do it just for yourself and the person is not also in it for themselves, because maybe there's a misrepresentation of what is wanted from it. Because some people will say certain things to get their way. You know, I think that's when things are misrepresented and that causes men to be trash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think if people were just more honest about it, then I don't think that would be the stigma that we get.
It's true. You know, my belief is that if you are not having sex with someone to build intimacy, then what you're really doing is you're doing like joint mutual masturbation.
Yeah.
You're just seeking to satisfy yourself.
Yeah. And I don't really think you could have sex with someone and not build any intimacy.
Right.
You know, like your body does that.
Right.
Right. You release oxytocin. Like that happens with that act. You cannot avoid it.
Exactly.
You know, but also in the same light, to kind of elaborate on it, this is something that I've heard from multiple like science podcasts. You know, since you do release oxytocin when you have sex with someone, if you do it almost like too frequently with different partners, it's really hard to build that base of oxytocin with your primary.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we've talked about this line. I get a lot of flack for when people ask if body count matters or not. And this is very controversial of me to say, yes, it fucking does matter.
Yeah.
But I brought 2 points. And that is one, right? The scientific, the hormonal changes that goes into your body when you have sex with someone.
Yeah. Where
it makes it harder to build that connection because you've built that connection with so many people. And also, you know, I always put things in the extremes to kind of put it in perspective. Like if you do it so fucking often and you have that much time to fucking have sex with like 1,000, 10,000 people, what the fuck are you doing with your life in general?
Exactly.
Right? Like where are you putting your time? Right.
Yeah.
So it does matter to a certain degree. I'm not saying like, no, don't go out and have sex. Like go out and have sex. I want to be a hoe too, you know? But it's like you really have to think about all the scenarios to say like it doesn't matter. Like that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Like anything, too much of a good thing can really become a painful thing and a disease in your life. Right?
Exactly.
And I think with something like as powerful, whatever your belief systems are around it, as spiritual as sex is, you have to be careful. Yeah. You have to be careful and wise. And like, I like to think of it like, look, that's a very, very like precious part of my energy. So who am I devoting that energy to?
That's true. And that, again, it goes back to guys being guys. Because I've definitely, it's weird because I grew up, I don't know how to say this, but I grew up with standards, right? And and some of my friends growing up, I'm like, God damn, you don't have any standards at all. And I'll talk about this thing that I've discussed, and it kind of blows my mind to hear it from so many other guys.
Yeah.
Which is one of my buddies told me this thing. I've never heard it before, but he was like, oh, I'm a 98%er.
98%er.
And I was like, what's that? He's like, I would sleep with 98% of women. Like, that's the chances. And I was like, oh, so there's like 2% chance that you won't sleep with. Like, wow, those 2%, that's terrible. They're gonna feel terrible to find out that they're not included in that 98%. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's crazy because you're a dog. And then to hear some other friends say like, yeah, I'm like a 97%. I'm like, holy shit, that's crazy. Why?
What's the categories? What characteristics make you fall into the 2 to 3%?
I don't know. See, that's the thing. I don't even think they really know either.
Wow.
Because at that point you might as well just add the other 2% in there.
Yeah, round up, bro. Like,
yeah, exactly. Be 100% in one thing in your life.
Yeah, for real.
But yeah, it's wild to me that that's how some guys think. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just saying that only guys do that, but I'll speak on the perspective like of the male experience because I am a guy and I have guy friends who talk to me about things like that.
Right.
And I think it goes back to now where we're at in life, we don't really need to procreate in that way anymore.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh shit. I'm pretty sure back then, the caveman days, it's not like, oh, is she attractive enough? Like, I think people just fucking did to procreate, right? And I think some of that has not left us.
It was survival back then.
Yeah,
bro.
exactly.
Like,
exactly. But it's like now it's like, oh no, not really, bro. It's like it's okay to have standards though.
Yeah.
It's actually good that you do.
Important.
It is. It's very important. And it's funny is other podcasts like the red pill ones, they're like, oh yeah, like the more guys sleep with girls, the higher value people view them. I'm like, no, I don't think so, bro. I think if we're to talk about that, I think who it is matters a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Like, I think it's who you're with, and I think that's what women deem as like valuable. If you're just like going off of anyone on the streets, I don't think they'll be like, man, that guy's so attractive for just picking up that random chick in the street. Like, no.
Women don't think like that.
No, they don't. But it's weird that some guys think that women think like that.
And that's a big issue with pickup culture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Guys assume women operate and think in different ways. It's like, have you ever just tried to sit and pay attention to how like your sister or your girlfriends, they think and what their needs are? It's very different than what most men assume.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Very different.
I think I grew up with my mom and my sister, and so I've seen that side of how it's not as simple as what a lot of guys think. And it's funny because I'll even hear my dad talk about it in that way. And I'm like, wow, it seems like you guys have two different understandings of how like a hetero relationship works.
Yeah.
And I understand it because like back then it's not like they went to school for it. My parents didn't even graduate high school.
Right.
So their knowledge was just, I'm sure, a lot of like wives' tales, folk tales of like how men are supposed to pick up women, and do it and however they would court women back then.
Right.
But times have changed. I think people are wiser now. And also the idea of romance has changed. Mm-hmm. I think some of the shit that was like romantic back then is kind of creepy now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I talk about this like it's crazy the things that we deemed as romantic back then. Like now it's almost like you be canceled for some of the shit that people do.
Yeah.
There's a movie Big Fish where the guy falls in love with this chick after seeing her for the first time, and he travels like across all these cities to like find her. Yeah. And he ends up in the front of her door and he's like, I love you, You do that shit right now, you would get a restraining order.
I know people have done stuff like that.
Yeah. Why are you shaking your head like that?
That's all I'll say.
Oh damn!
But I love
dude.
that movie, Big Fish.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and
Yeah.
it's crazy because it makes you feel good about it, right?
Yeah.
But then you look at it, and like how we were talking about, like relationships are always evolving, and they're way more different than ever now.
Oh yeah.
Like even the approach, like I talked to you about how your studio love session it's rare.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
And in most cases, it does happen through apps now, and I think it does change the idea of romance because, you know, already people don't want to admit that they meet on apps. I think it's starting to become more accepted
Yeah.
because like, oh shit, a lot of people are doing it. But initially people don't want to say that. Like, oh yeah, we met on Tinder. We met on like Bumble or whatever. It's like,
Yeah,
like,
but there's a lot of relationships that have worked.
oh
You
yeah,
know,
of course,
like
of course.
for me myself, I'm a little more of a traditionalist. You know, I like meeting people in person, and I feel really blessed that like my wife and I met through our mutual love of music, because that, like, talk about such a great connection point and something that we can build and work on together.
Also a good story too.
An awesome story. Yeah, you know. Yeah, like I know plenty of couples who've gone together through apps and they stay together really in love. There's one that like our mutual friend Jeff introduced me to, and that couple, they've been together for like 10 years, bro.
Oh, wow.
And when I hang out with them, like they seem like a new couple. So
You know
just
what?
really never know.
Yeah,
You really never know
again,
where love's gonna come from.
no bad stigma behind it. I was just mentioning how people generalize that
Yeah.
because I think half my friend group who is married all met through apps. So
That's
you know,
great.
find love the way you find it. You know, like I'm
Yeah.
not against it. Like that's your life. That's all good. You know.
Yeah,
I just think it's interesting how it's changed.
a lot.
You know, going back to how you said like you're a more traditional guy. I don't think there are many guys who are not traditional in the sense of they want to find someone in person,
Right.
right? It's just harder.
Yeah.
So people deviate from that and they go towards apps where it's, I don't even know if I can even say easier because I think it's easier for some guys and still just as hard for others.
Yeah.
If anything, probably harder.
I did the app thing one time and it was kind of stressful, bro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was
So
stressful.
what's your approach? I've literally used Tinder once, like
Yeah.
for a day, for like I think 30 minutes or something like that, and that was like 2012. So I don't even remember really how any of
man.
that works.
I'm the worst person to ask because I had the worst success rate. I mean, I think I had like one decent date, but that one really bad. I had two really bad dating experiences.
Too
actually.
really bad.
Yeah.
Like how bad is really bad?
Bro, like bad. I just got out of a relationship one time and I was trying to pull some shenanigans. So I was just like going through Tinder real quick, like 2 days before Valentine's Day.
Oh shit! You had a deadline to meet.
Yeah, exactly. Deadline quota. And there was this girl who seemed cool. And we were messaging. We're like, yeah, let's hang out on Valentine's Day. And she's like, bet, okay. It's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, let's go get sushi. There's a great sushi spot. Now, I was a little bit like wary because I'm like, man, I'm really literally about to meet a stranger. This is actually kind of scary. So I was like, come to my area. So I was like a little bit in control. I was one who had to feel more safe. But I invite her over and I don't hear from her. It comes to the day and I don't hear from her for like 3 hours. And I'm like, oh, this is strange. And then she finally texts me. It's like 9 p.m. It's like, hey, I'm so sorry. I fell asleep. You wanna meet up? I'm like, well, yeah, I really want to get this. So yeah, come down. You know, I still didn't get sushi yet. Like, let's do this thing. And bro, it was weird. She drove into like a 7-Eleven parking lot. Like I felt like I was doing a drug deal. And she's like, come meet me by the 7-Eleven. And she was in an alleyway. And I drove around and I saw this like little yellow bug sitting in like the alley. And she's like, park in front of me. And I'm like, okay. So I drive around, I park in front of her, her lights turn off and her door opens. I'm like, yo, I'm about to get killed. Like, what the heck is happening
And you're
here?
still there. That's
I'm like,
crazy.
yeah. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I got to make the first move. So I open my car door and walk out and I start walking towards her. And her car door opens more and more and more. And I just see this person sitting in the front seat. I'm like, who's this person? And then she gets out and she's like a foot shorter and like 3 feet wider than what I saw in those photos.
Golly.
Yeah, and I get a lot of emotions all in one. But we're nice guys, right? So I'm pretty angry. I'm pretty like disappointed, but I'm also like, I'm not about to waste your time.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, cool. I downgraded from sushi and I took her like next door to the diner and I'm like, let's get like some coffee or tea or whatever. And maybe there'll be something redeeming about it.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we'll find something cool to talk about or I'll make a new friend or whatever. Bro, I do not like spending time with people who talk too much. And this woman on and on and on and on about herself.
Wow.
Red flags. Yeah. So that was the last time I spoke to her.
Wow. It sounds like a baby reindeer moment.
Bro, yeah. Man, yeah. So what I'm saying in summary, I'm not good about asking about Tinder advice or what you call dating apps.
I mean, horror stories are welcome too. So
Yeah, it's a good story.
yeah, I mean, it lets people know what's out there because I've heard of people getting catfished on those apps. No one that I know until now, you know, and to me that's insane because it things like that I'm so curious about this human psyche and why people do that and like what makes them think they could get away with it. To me is fascinating, you know. What causes that?
We all just need love, man. You know?
I agree.
Yeah.
And I just think that to a certain degree, the people that are in her life probably has failed her, you know? Because to get to that point, I'm not saying you're too far gone, but it's definitely going to be a long road to recovery.
For sure. Because if you do that once, what's going to stop you from like continuously doing that?
Yeah, who knows how many times it's been before you know?
Right. Yeah. Ouch. Yeah, no, it is. And it's, then you just have to think about what's going on in her thought world. You know, what does this woman say to herself every day when she wakes up? When she looks at herself in the mirror, you know, because I don't care how you look, there's always going to be someone out there for you. And I also believe that beauty, it's really an internal thing.
I agree.
And the more you love yourself and the more your thought world is clean and positive and you're empowering yourself and you're loving yourself and you become hungry for the good things of life, whether it's what you read or eat or how you work out or all those things, when you become hungry for those things, you exude value, you exude beauty to the world. But like you said, negativity and self-deprecating ways of thinking, it's a disease, man. And if you feed it, it will fester. And your behaviors and your thoughts, those things can feed it. And so I pray and hope for people like that are going through that, like, find a way to learn to love yourself as much as you possibly can, and your life will change. It's
so hard to figure out a solution for that, though, because typically when you get to that point, there has to be a level of delusion involved, you know? And going back to it, like, I'm kind of curious what happened to her in the past and how she was brought up, because I think that is probably going to be a big part of her story.
Yeah, it's sad. You know, you mentioned that therapy is relatively a new thing. Mm-hmm. And I think we're starting to understand what therapy works and what doesn't. Last year I got my certification in hypnotherapy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in that tool because my belief is what you think about and what you visualize. And as you learn to master that, you can really reform and reshape your life and grow even from the worst traumas and stuff. Like literally, as I was taking the course, I helped run a couple practice clients through it. And I had a friend who came back to me the next month. He's like, bro, we did like one meditation hypno session together and I quit smoking. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like this stuff, this is very effective. There's tools to the art of therapy that we're just tapping into right now.
Yeah. I believe it. You know, I think in the same aspect of religion getting painted a bad way by, you know, the people condemning people to hell.
Yeah.
I think certain therapists get the same thing because it's so relatively new and there's some people who are in the field not for the right reasons, you know, and I do still advocate for therapy, but I understand why some people are so reluctant on it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, because the idea that you're supposed to sit there for multiple sessions, because it's not supposed to be a one time and everything's fixed.
Right.
Because how do you unravel like generations of trauma in an hour session? You know, it's kind of unrealistic.
Well, if you think about therapy, we've only had it since like Freud.
Yeah.
And Freud I think he was onto something when he realized, okay, there's something that goes on in our mind. But when you look back at like the way he was going about therapy, it was like the way we went about early like medicine, where we thought putting leeches on people would make them feel better.
Yeah.
So like, I don't believe in making someone sit down and talk about their past traumas, because if my whole life is like, what you think about is what you become. And so if I'm just making someone revisit, or if I'm revisiting all my past stuff and trying to work through that, then actually I'm just re-traumatizing myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and like what you said, you'll win when you focus on the silver linings, right? And so if we can start focusing on better therapeutic tools that can help people keep their eye on the good things and meditate on the positive things in life, then I think we'll be having a lot more healed people walking around this world.
Yeah, and I don't think that people need to hone in on their traumas, because you don't want to get re-triggered. But there's this psychologist that I listen to. His name's Gabor Mate, and he talks about how traumas is like there's a silver lining to it,
Right?
Which is like, now you know what it is, you could tackle it and like fix it.
Right.
And if you didn't know, then you would just continue making the same mistake and not figure out like where the pain point is really.
Awareness is a good thing, but it's a double-edged sword.
It is.
We had a friend over recently, and he kept saying, he was very into like his therapy, right? But he kept saying, my anxiety, my anxiety, my anxiety. And my wife stopped me and was like, you don't have to assume that label. And the more you assume it, actually, the more you entrench yourself in thinking that you are stuck in this anxious state. She's like, it's good to be aware, so then you can know what it is you want to grow from, but stop owning the thing like that's what you are and that's what you will always be. Right?
You identify as that.
Yeah.
Like an anxious person.
Exactly. So I think it's this. Whatever it is you're going through, whether it's anxiety, poverty, stress, whatever, of course, be aware so you're sober about what you need to like grow in, but then learn to mismanage that thing. Learn to operate against that, so then that thing starts to fall off, and don't own it like it's you, because that's not us.
Yeah, I think it's it works so subtly that you think that it has no effect.
Yeah.
But this is something I've noticed recently. I have friends who always say that they're tired. Like I'm thinking of 3 specific people.
This is a big one.
They say all the fucking time, from the time that they wake up, I'm sure throughout the day, to the time that I see them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm tired, and they'll say it constantly. And I'm like, I think you're making yourself more tired,
Bro. 100%. 100%. Like, all right, I caught myself in that too, because I would come back home from work and I would be like, oh yeah, babe, I feel tired, and she wants to, we kind of have a different clock. Like, I'm really up, I'm up at 5:30 and I'm just like going, and then come like 6-7 p.m. I'm a little bit like, all right, I need to rest a bit. She's the wire the other way, so I'll come home and she's all energetic, and so I want to be present and fill with energy and as much as I can. And I caught myself being like, oh babe, I don't know, I'm feeling tired. It would just suck the energy, and I would feel more tired, and I'd fall asleep early. But then there's a moment I just had this thought in my head, and I didn't say nothing. And I just like, all right, you know what? I can literally just tell myself I feel energetic right now. And I changed my posture a little bit. I like examined the room, and I felt good. I felt really good. I'm learning right now, rest, though sleep is a good thing, though like taking time off is a good thing, rest isn't just found in those things. It's really found in what's going on in here. I've had plenty of times and nights, and I'm sure you had too, where you slept 8-10 hours, but you felt like you slept 1.
Oh yeah.
And my belief is like, if you go to sleep and there's anxiety or there's whispers of hurt or stress or fear or stuff festering in there, it's gonna rob you of that sleep.
Oh yeah, dude. Like, I'm notorious for sleeping like 3 or 4 hours a day and like functioning fine, right? I'm sure there's underlying issues that are going on that I'm not fully addressing because it's not as apparent yet. But going back to what you're saying, I've had the 8-hour days where I wake up and my eyes are bloodshot and my head hurts. I'm like, what the hell? And I've actually had a month of that. Like, I think it was like 2 months ago where I had that for like a month and a half straight. And it was because work was super stressful. and I was highly anxious before bed and highly anxious as soon as I woke up. You know, and I think good rest is really important. You know, if you're not gonna get a lot of it, try to get the good amount, like maybe the good 3 or 4 hours, and make sure it's quality, right?
Yeah,
because otherwise it's like the duration almost doesn't even matter. If anything, it might even be worse, to be honest, because if you're that highly anxious going into it, like you're too restless to get any good sleep.
Yeah,
like you're not exhausted enough to get the rest where your brain just shuts down.
Yeah,
because your brain is still running. You hear that a lot, right? For people who can't sleep, they're like, yeah, my brain keeps on running,
right,
and I can't go to sleep.
Something I'm trying to master right now is what I call wolf sleep.
Wolf sleep.
Yeah. Wolves don't sleep that much. Most dogs don't sleep that much. They sleep in like little intermittent periods.
Yeah.
And wolves are interesting because they don't really let themselves go fully into REM. They kind of have this like slightly alert mode. That way they're resting. It's called like restful wakefulness. And but then if anything goes on in the natural world, they're quick and they can move and they can operate. And there was a time when I was like working and I could only get like about an hour to 2 hours of sleep a day, and that was for like a 2 months span. And I was trying to figure out like, well, how do I manage my rest, because I feel pretty like off without the right amount of sleep. And I found like, okay, working out actually really helps. Even if I'm really tired, it resets everything. Some heavy cardio, and then also what I call wolf sleep, or small intermittent naps where I almost go into REM, but I'm meditating on something too. I have like a phrase or something I'm thinking about that's very like positive, or about the vision of where it is I want to go in my life, something that like fuels my heart and my soul. And I sit in that and just visualize that, oh, I'm this like very like rested place, but not all the way asleep. And that actually gives me a whole lot more energy than binge sleeping for like 10 hours in a day.
Yeah, I think there's also such thing as like too much sleep. You know,
that's
like,
a bad one.
yeah, I've definitely done that, where I'm like, whoa, I thought I caught up on sleep. Like, what is this? Why am I so groggy? Yeah, and it's like so important. You know, like not to out my age or anything like that, but I do think it's more important as you get older.
Definitely.
You know, I think running on fumes is something the youth could do, and I think maybe you don't notice it right away, but definitely as you get older, not having quality sleep, not having like the 8 hours or 7 hours that you're looking for, it definitely takes a toll on you for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, it's got to be that quality.
Yeah, sleep. I strive for that now. You know, I used to be so proud of like barely sleeping.
Right.
You know? And you're like, yeah, I only sleep 3 or 4 hours a day. Yeah. Now I'm like, fuck that, man. Like, just give me my like minimum 6, I would say, for me personally. I mean, I'm trying. I'm not perfect. You know, I'm trying to listen to my body. You know, I think that was one thing that I was like really bad at, was I would not listen to my body at all when I was younger. I fought everything. You know what I mean? Like, the feelings, like the tiredness, nothing. I did not listen to my body. I would charge everything head on. Yeah. And I took pride in that. Right. You know, I think that's what guys do. I think that's what youthful guys do. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, let me stop denying all the signs.
But you know what? I think you have to go through that phase in order to get to where you are now. Because I did the same thing. Like the way I would work out, the way I would not sleep, the way I would like maybe try to like not eat for a couple of days or whatever. I would just be like, let me push and grind and just be like a soldier so I can get through anything and everything and fill my cup up with all that stuff. So now you know you can do it, right? But now you understand you don't necessarily need to do it. And I think that's a level of like life mastery that you have to be at, where you know like, okay, it's actually better to be more slow paced and restful. But if time comes and you just got to like fight and grind, you're like ready. You've already had your training time to do it.
I did last year I did a 7-day water fast. Okay. And people are like, why are you doing it? To lose weight? I'm like, not really. I just doing it to see if I could do it. Yeah. That's really all it was. It was just a challenge, you know. I lost weight in the process. Like, that's cool. But it's like crazy because a lot of people don't know their threshold for things, you know.
Yeah, it's big.
And I think it's gotten to a point where I think one of the things that's always I've been curious about for a long time is that when people get hangry, I think that's very interesting. Because I've never really had that. Yeah. Right. And I see people who don't eat for like 2 hours and they're like, oh, I'm so fucking annoyed right now. I'm just like, damn, really? We just ate like 2 hours ago. And to me, I've never wanted to be that person where my appetite like pretty much predicts my mood. Right. You know? Right. So that's how my fasting journey kind of started. I was like, okay, let
That's
me
cool.
see this. It went from like a day to 3, and then eventually I jumped to 7. I do want to try 10.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not advocating for this for everyone, because I'm not a health like junkie.
Yeah.
I'm just doing this as a challenge to myself. So yeah, I am curious as far as like how that's gonna feel by 10 days.
I'm big into it now. I've never done like water fast. The longest I fasted for without food is about 36 hours. But a lot of times, every like 3 to 4 months, I'll do about a 20 to 30 day fast, where it's like kind of like Ramadan, right? Where
Gotcha.
you break at 6 p.m. But I'm not breaking with a big meal. I'm gonna keep everything light. So it's like I'm 80% full by the time I go to bed. So I'll break with like salads and like a nice protein and whatever. But I found like one time my mom was like, why are you doing this to your health? You're losing all this weight and da da da. But I'm like, yeah, but there's something great that feels about this thing, both spiritually and physically. Like I find that maybe when I'm fasting a little bit more, I need a little bit more sleep. But when I'm working, man, my focus is so good. And every time I do go through those periods of fasting, my energy, my understanding, my vision for my life, my purpose, and my discipline and my habits is a lot more like fine tuning. I think obviously it's important to eat and eat well, but also when we take breaks from food, there's something about eating too much that messes up our brains. And I found that when I eat too much, I get a little more like, I'll be like, wait, no, I'm not anxious. And all of a sudden I'm anxious. Oh man, I had like a bunch of food last night. I had big breakfast today. Like something about your gut and it being overfilled can jack with your focus up here.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. We have definitely like transmitters in our gut. That's why we have gut feelings, right?
That's true. That's good.
And I've had this theory for a minute, and I think I've heard some people talk about it. I haven't explored it too much, but I think very similar, like how we shouldn't be digesting all the time, aka like eating on the clock 24/7.
Right.
We shouldn't always be stimulated all the time in our mind.
That's good. It's true.
We need time to process things. So in our mind, it's processing. In our stomach, it's digestion, right? And I think in both cases, like we need to allow our bodies to work things out.
Yeah. Let it rest.
Yeah, let it rest. And I think that's what's causing people to be so anxious nowadays, is because you could be overly stimulated, right? You could find something to do all the time, and not in a way where it's healthy too. And I'm not great at this, right? I recently just deleted my social media off my phone.
Nice.
Like, I still have it on my iPad because we post things, right? So I have to use it. But I found myself in times of boredom, like I would just scroll, and I know that's a bad habit, and I've been trying to get better at it. But then, that's how addiction works sometimes. Sometimes you cave and then you get back to your old habits. And I had to make, I'm not saying like that's a drastic change, I still have it on my iPad and stuff like that. I still access it. It's just not so readily available for me.
Yeah.
Which I think that's like very important, because back then, like we had times of silence.
Right.
You had no choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you didn't have access to people like how we do now, Back then it was like if you were on your own out there on a hike in the mountains or whatever, there's no one.
And
nothing but silence.
You're creative. Like how many times did you have great ideas that came to you when you were just doing the laundry or
all the time.
driving the car or in the shower, right?
All the time.
Boredom is an important thing.
It's huge, because I think that's us like processing thoughts.
Exactly.
And allow ourselves to go through with it, because going back to talking about how things affect us, we like to believe that we can multitask. I think human beings take pride on multitasking. The more you take on, the more you can do at once, the more valuable you are.
Right.
But realistically, if you really look at your performance when you're multitasking, you're actually doing things worse. Like you might be doing 2-3 things, but at like 20%.
Yeah.
And that's what I've realized, is that while I do also have creative thoughts while I'm doing something like watching a show, it's definitely not nearly as creative as when I'm just sitting there and like honing in on it.
Right.
I think that's like really important to sit through it. And that's also not just creative thoughts. It's also feelings and emotions too. I think one of the things I've like tried to really pay attention to is people's mannerisms and how they, act towards people. And I think it's so interesting that some people are so unaware of it, but I think that's because they don't have time to like sit and like reflect on it.
It's big.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's really big.
I'm I'm terrible at that too. You know, I've only recently started doing that more. And it's weird because it's a phrase you hear a lot, you know, just take a look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually huge. I know some people do it out of vanity. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like really reflect on your actions and what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying in a way where it's like you should criticize yourself. I'm saying in a way where it's like, what am I doing and what was the point of that? You know, I think that's really, really important. To me, being as intentional as possible is so important.
Yeah.
And I've only come to realize that my actions hold a lot of weight. You know, everyone's actions does.
Right.
So to kind of invalidate it by doing things unintentionally, you know, and allowing things to just pan out, I think that's what's causing a lot of people so much anxiety because they're not thinking things through.
Yeah.
You know, understanding why they're doing these things. Like, why did you pick up your, like, I find myself doing this a lot, like prior, right? Like I would have my laptop on, and this was when Facebook was more prevalent, but I would have Facebook tab on my laptop, and then I would look through Facebook on my phone, and I just saw the same feed twice. I'm like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, now I know why, because it's designed to do that to you.
Right.
It's designed to grab your attention. But also, like, why are you doing that? Why are you grabbing your phone or your laptop? Oh, it's because I'm bored and I have a hard time sitting with my own thoughts.
A lot of bad habits like that. Like there's emotional eating. There's obviously the scrolling addictions. There's smoking.
Yeah,
like,
smoking. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's sometimes just like a little dopamine hit.
Yeah.
That we need, and we'll find ourselves without even thinking about it. It's just subconsciously accessing that sort of thing.
Yeah, a bunch of industries built on that.
A lot.
You know, built on escapism, pretty much.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
it's to me now, I think it's bigger than ever where people have to sit down and like just talk to each other, because it is a slower burn than just getting the instant satisfaction of like seeing that video, that cat video that makes you laugh or whatever. You know? And I don't know how to bring this up, and I hope that this conversation allows people to understand. But you know, even my friend groups, I'll see friends who are just constantly like on their phones, and I want to say something, but at the same time I'm like, is it my place to? Because I've kind of let this go on for like a very long time.
Right.
I think it is necessary. It is a necessary conversation to have with even friends, you know?
I think there is. And I think there's like subtle ways we can do it. You know, I think about that now times, like whether it's, you know, and we don't really pull our phones out too much, like when my wife and I are hanging out and Sid and I are hanging out, but sometimes that comes up, and a lot of times humor, I feel like, is the best approach towards like helping people. And like I'll just make a like funny joke. He's like, "Oh, you being millennial right now?" You know? And it's just like, "Oh yeah, actually, sorry." And brings people back and stuff.
Oh, okay. That's a good approach.
Yeah.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, like for me, when it comes to like setting, if I have a boundary that I feel like I need to set in the workplace or with my wife or with my family, I'm trying to learn the mastery of doing it through like empathy. Right. And I for myself, I know like when I growing up, I didn't really like being told what to do. Now I'm very eager to like get direction from people, but most people aren't wired that way, you know? And I think in our day and age, with your friends and family, best way is like kind of lead people into things gently, kindly, with humor, and almost allowing them to think that it was them that came up with the idea themselves. That's one thing I'm learning, definitely how to master in my career.
That sounds like a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Like if you can get that down, that sounds crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it takes a little bit of humility, because I have to be willing to accept that like they might not credit me towards certain ideas or concepts that I have, but at the end of the day, I don't care about that as much unless it's like something that is important for me to be credited on. But to me, I'm more concerned about the genuine, because I'm working at a record label now, right? And so as a producer, my heart and my purpose is to help elevate the career of the artists who are signed to our label. So my mind is always like, what's best for the artists that are signed to us? What's going to get them to the next step in their career? What's going to help them make more money or get them like the next show, whatever it is. And so when I get to interface with the director label all the time, and when I'm in the office with them, I'm always trying to think, what could we do? How could I help bring more awareness to the needs of the artists and stuff? And I'm learning like, if I just tell him what to do, that's the employee telling the boss what to do. And a brilliant idea can immediately be shut down, not because it wasn't smart enough, but because it was just coming and delivered in the wrong way.
Yes.
So now I'm like, all right, there's a thought. that could make the studio better. There's a thought that can make this artist career better. I want to see this enacted. So when I'm in the next meeting, how can I position it in such a way that it made it my boss or the COO feel like they come up with it? Because then they're going to be more likely to enact it.
That's brilliant, dude. I like that.
It's like that movie Inception, planting the ideas in people's minds, right?
I think in the Robert Greene book, The 48 Laws of Power, he talks about that too.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, oh, yeah, like let them feel like they thought of it. And that's how you get to be executed, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, like give me credit. And this is what I told you to do. I think that's definitely a great approach. And I think that's a approach that parents could do better for their kids. And I think I think in terms of, I think it depends on the relationship dynamic.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
In your relationship with your wife, I'm sure there's so many different ways to handle that.
Right.
Because it's a little different than a record label where you need to be seen too for your efforts of going into a relationship. And I think that's what hurts a lot of relationships is a lot of us, we move in silence and then we want to be seen. And it's kind of difficult because I've definitely done things for my past partners where I didn't really say what I did, but I've done it. And you know, just for the best of their life, right? And now I also find myself where I'm like upset that they don't value me enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, but they don't even know that I did this for them.
Right.
And then it's like, well, what the hell do you expect, Pete?
Yeah. That's
they don't even know.
right?
They don't even know.
Yeah.
So like, at what point do you tell them so they can acknowledge it? You know?
Yeah. See, it's a good point. Like I try not to ever do that, you know, and it's hard because I will find myself at times I'm like, oh man, like this person doesn't even know how much I'm doing in the background right now to make sure everything stays afloat or goes steady. But then when comes that like point when I need to ask like, hey, can I have some validation, right? Because I do think it's fine to ask your partner for more support because some people are good at supporting their partners. Some people struggle with, you know, affirmation or boosting someone else's confidence, right? And it's an important part of a relationship. We're there to also help boost each other's confidences. But yeah, like one thing I try to do is always serve and ask myself, if I'm going to give something to someone, am I going to do it from a place where I'm expecting something? And if I am, I'm probably actually, it's worse for me to give that thing than it is for me to not give it at all. So I check myself before I do it. And my belief is like, let me do everything full-heartedly and not seek validation. And again, things are slow but certain, but it's so funny because many times when I did that and at times I really wanted to get validation, but I let go of that, then like a week later, out of nowhere, man, Brandon, I'm so appreciative of what you do. You know, I'm so proud of you for doing this, this, and this, you know, like that's the artful part of life. Like we rarely get things at the timing we want to, but if we just do the right thing, we'll get a little bit later. But it'll almost always be better than what we were expecting in that moment.
It's almost because you're not expecting it too.
It's always because you're not.
On to the questions.
Yes, sir.
All right. So question number 1 is what makes Brandon, specifically Brandon, what makes you uniquely you?
The word, I'm just answering this with the first thing that comes to my mind, but passion, right? I think passion is what drives me. Passion for, we all have multiple purposes, right? It depends on what it is we're in our life. One of my purposes is I'm a husband. Another is I'm a musician. Another is I'm a friend, a mentor, a son, a counselor, whatever it is. My thing is in all these things that I'm assigned to do, what's the level of passion that I show up with it? And that's what gives me energy all day, every day of my life. Can I show up with as much focus, power, and love and excitement with everything I've been assigned to do? So passion is what comprises me and was what gives me energy.
All right. Second question. What was a monumental event in your life that you remember? It could be good and it could be bad too. Something that's shifted the trajectory of your life.
Oh, when I graduated from college, I traveled to Europe for a month, backpacked completely alone. It was crazy. It's like I just saved up a bunch of money, bought a one-way ticket, and went to Europe and stayed for a month. And that opened my eyes. I was very shy, very introverted, very like close person, but I just knew in my heart, I'm like, I got to take this trip. And it was one of the best investments into myself because it taught me how to survive when you're alone. It taught me how to open my mouth and ask for my needs and fight for my needs. Like, you know, there's situations where like a room got canceled and I had to figure out a way to get that room back for myself, whatever it was. And it opened my mind to the world of cultures and that we think so differently all throughout the world. So to be sensitive, empathetic, and a good listener, that was absolutely a monumental time in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. And for the last question, how would you want to be remembered?
Have this vision of my life. I really always focus on like certain images of key achievements, key thresholds in my life that I know I'll cross. And the very last one is my funeral, but thousands, if not millions of people viewing it, all impacted by the love and joy in my life. And I see myself at the end of my life, everyone who's seeing me go and transition out of this world to the next with smiles and celebration in their heart. That's how I want to be remembered.
Well, Brandon, dude, thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time and honestly being able to talk to you about things that you might have been fearful about. Hopefully that helped you kind of speak about your life as authentically as possible, because I think these conversations are needed and we shouldn't be walking on eggshells, especially if we're just providing positivity. So thank you, man. I appreciate it.
No, Peter, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Of course, man. And can you let the audience know where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram, _Brandon Miranda, or my website, brandonmirandamusic.com.
And thank you to our audience for watching all the way through. Hopefully you guys got at least a giggle, maybe some value out of this episode. It was fun for me, and I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment below what you guys want us to talk about next time. And remember, live fast, eat ass.